Great. So welcome everyone to our very first SEL Speaker Series event of the 21-22 school year. We are super excited to have you here. For anyone who is unfamiliar with Lausanne Learning, we are a nonprofit based here in Memphis, and our mission is to engage students, empower educators, and transform schools. And one of the ways that we do that is to offer things like this, a speaker series where we talk about different aspects of a topic. So social and emotional learning, or a variety of things in education. So for any of you who kind of know us on the conference side, where we run conferences on technology, on mindfulness, on STEAM, on a whole variety of things, this is kind of the other side of that. So this is us just kind of bringing a speaker to you. So I'm so excited that we're having this year. Last year was our very first year and it went so great. Before we introduce our speaker tonight, I do want to turn it over to Greg Graber, who is our Director of Social and Emotional Learning at Lausanne, Lausanne Collegiate School here in Memphis, where we're based, to tell you a little bit about his program and how kind of what he does, but also how he and Lausanne Learning work together. So Greg, I'll let you do a little introduction.
So thank you, Amber. I really appreciate it. I want to thank everyone for being here, and especially Justine. This is our second season of doing these, and it's really been popular for our learning community. And we started discussing names for our second season, and I got to say, Justine's just kept coming up more and more than anyone. So we're definitely delighted to do this. My job as the Director of Social Emotional Learning is kind of twofold at Lausanne. One is I work with Amber at Lausanne Learning. We do consulting for the nonprofit. Area expertise is SEL and mindfulness, and also we put together programs on emotional intelligence and wellness and mental well-being for our students and our faculty and our parents. And we'll be doing this session. I think, Amber, we have 6 of them lined up for this school year, and want to invite you to come to all of them. And we're delighted that you're here. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Greg. I really appreciate one of the great things about working at Lausanne and about being an educator there and being someone who works with, my gosh, faculty, staff, students, everyone, is the importance of kind of wellness and social emotional learning that we have really kind of strived to put on our culture, that we've really brought to the culture. And I think Greg is a big part of that. And then events like this too are a huge part of what we're trying to offer to everyone in our community. Like Greg said, we have 6 of these this year. We are really excited to just kind of go through the year and learn. I know last year we had 5. We started in the spring, and it was just a great learning experience. I feel like I learned a lot. So I'm really excited to have everyone here. So I'm delighted to welcome Dr. Justine Okerson. Like Greg said, her name came up in every single discussion of who we should have as a speaker this year. She's worked with students for over a decade in admissions and scholarship selection. She's currently the Director of Scholar Selection at Moorhead Cain Foundation at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. She does a ton of stuff there that sounds like you're very busy, I'm sure. So we appreciate your time. But she does a lot of things there with annual selection process, on-campus yield programming for the Moorhead Cain Scholars. She got her PhD in higher ed administration from William and Mary. She also has a master's degree from William and Mary, and her bachelor's degree is from the University of Virginia. And she is also a Lausanne Collegiate School alum. So go Lynx. Justine, I'm going to turn it over to you. I'm going to make you a host. Everyone, if you have any questions, please just put it in the chat. We'll be happy to answer, and let me know if you need anything. All right.
Thank you so much, Amber. Well, hello and welcome to everyone. I'm so thrilled to be with you tonight. I'm going to share my screen in just a second. Here we go. All right, you can see my slides. Perfect. So again, tonight I'm going to be talking a little bit about emotional intelligence and college admissions. So from finding the right fit for college to navigating applications, now more than ever, emotional intelligence is so crucial for college admission. Today, we're going to be discussing a little bit more about how to cultivate emotional intelligence and apply lessons learned to college admission, future careers, as well as lifelong learning. All right. Just gonna go ahead and open up a waiting room. Nope. All right. So we will move on from here. So I want to tell you a little bit about me. Hopefully that will help you as you are kind of getting to know me and a little bit more about my background. But this is not a picture of me, but it might as well have been, because when I was a young child, I was dreaming of college. I went on a bunch of college tours with my older sister and just fell in love with the idea of college, the idea of getting to explore different things that I've never been able to study before, getting to experience dining halls and residential living learning communities, and just getting to be in an environment completely surrounded by academia. Many of these goals and desires, of course, were founded in my experience at Lausanne. I did attend Lausanne from kindergarten through 12th grade, so lifelong Lausanne learner and a big fan of the Lynx. Obviously, I grew up in Memphis, Tennessee, and I'm a big fan of all things Southern. I love mac and cheese, Spanish moss, biscuits, you name it. I'm a huge beach lover, so that's why I live close to the coast now. I grew up going to the Outer Banks, so being close to the beaches in North Carolina is definitely very important to me. Speaking of wellness, I am also a fitness instructor. I danced at Ballet Memphis growing up through high school, and then ended up becoming a yoga instructor, a kickboxer, and a weightlifting instructor. I'm a big fan of mini golf. One of my many goals is to play every mini golf course in the state of North Carolina. I'm a huge fan of brunch, and I absolutely love to travel. So one of the things that I definitely miss during the pandemic is not getting to travel as much. My last big trip was to Spain, Portugal, and Morocco. So fast forward a little bit. After Lausanne, I did attend the University of Virginia, and I got really interested in kind of why students make the decisions that they make on a daily basis. And this kind of spurred into thinking a little bit more about higher education and thinking about why students make the decisions that they do in terms of where they want to attend college. So when I was building my research for my dissertation, I was thinking about how can I really understand the influences that help students to decide where to go to school. And most of the research out there said it's the campus visit, it's visiting a college campus that really makes a difference. But what is it about that campus visit that makes a difference? How, as an administrator, can I help to affect change on a college campus and to help students to find their right fit? So by looking at a number of different lenses, by looking at the socially constructed concept of a campus, thinking about what students do when they're on a college campus visit and how they can really think about what's going to be a good fit for them, how they've seen college portrayed in books, in media, in podcasts, etc. And then thinking about the cultural capital as well helped me to really understand the phenomenon of college choice, of how students ultimately make that final college choice decision. We know that there's a number of influences on college choice: family, peers, institutional characteristics, that ever elusive fit terminology. Thinking about any of those additional influences, people just saying names or seeing billboards as you're driving down the road, any of those types of things can make a difference on a student's trajectory and thoughts about their potential future at a college campus. So overall, I was thinking about looking at college choice through a number of different lenses, thinking about the economic side of the house. So again, thinking about financial aid, thinking about scholarships, thinking about what college might help a student to succeed economically after graduation, which schools are really great for social mobility. Thinking about the sociological framework side of the house. So thinking about where does the student fit, what fits into their pathway, their narrative, what fits into their family, and then the psychological elements as well of making that decision and really wanting it to be something that a student may be proud of. So when I was doing my research, I ended up doing a three-pronged approach to really digging into college choice and the campus visit. I did interviews with brand new college freshmen in their very first month on their new college campus across the Mid-Atlantic. And this was helpful because I wanted to know why they chose the school that they chose before they kind of got confused about why they made that choice, before they lost those decision-making thoughts and skills that they went through to make that final choice. I did campus information sessions and tours where I eavesdropped and pretended like I was a little college student, just listening to the questions and feedback and concerns, things that families and students were bringing up when they were going on college tours across the Mid-Atlantic. And then last, I also did open-ended surveys with high school seniors right after they finished their college applications. So they'd finished applying to college, but they had not yet made their college choice decision. So I was interested in trying to find out what things were really going to make a difference for them, what they were interested in, but also what they were going to kind of decide going in, moving forward from there. So overall, after all of those different stages, I was able to synthesize that information to find out a little bit more about what really was important in the college choice process for students. Students really want to feel special. They like targeted messages. They don't like it when a school is sending them a 5-paragraph essay that could be, you could just replace the name of a school, and it's not very specific, it's not very special to them, and it doesn't make them feel like they're anything but a number. Material should be very school specific, right? So again, getting to know the heart of that school. It's very easy. In my research and in my work, I am constantly training staff of mine not to say things like, the best thing about this school is the community, because every school says that. What does that really mean? And how does that stand out? So you have to really dig deeper than that into storytelling. Next is aesthetics. Ironically, I guess, a lot of students talked about how the aesthetics of a school could be a turn on or turn off. I had a student who said that they went to go visit a college campus and they were really upset about the gates and fence around the college. So they didn't even get out of the car. So some of those tiny details can really make a difference to a student about whether or not it's a place that they can find themselves being happy and really thriving over the course of their 4 years in college. Next is personal interactions. So were they greeted by the person that they met when they were parking? When they got to the college admission office, were people smiling? Were they excited? When they were looking at random students around the college campus, were they wearing the t-shirt? Were they wearing the colors? Were they wearing other college or university t-shirts? What were they talking about? So community and vibe was definitely something that really surprised me during my research to learn a little bit more about. Basically, students and family members alike said that they spent a lot of time analyzing kind of what they saw as codes on campus, looking at bulletin boards, imagining them as if they were hieroglyphics, really trying to get to a sense of what does this community care about? What fundraisers are happening on campus? What are people tabling about, et cetera? Trying to really get a better sense of that college campus and diving into that word community a bit more. So ultimately from that, I was able to create a new college choice model. So students ultimately decide with a funnel kind of what they want to look at. Ultimately, they're looking at academic rigor, location, major, reputation, size, those kinds of things. From that initial funnel, they come up with a list of schools to visit. Once they visit those schools, again, those three things that I talked about, aesthetics, personal interactions, and community and vibe, really come into play in order for them to make their decision about where they will attend college.
I just noticed the campus was absolutely beautiful. I was just taken with how gorgeous the grounds looked. When you go to college, if you don't like where you're going and if you don't feel comfortable, that's going to affect you in every aspect of your life. And so this campus visit was really, really important to me. Definitely a deal breaker. I mean, it was so pretty out during my visit. Honestly, they had a piano in like the lobby of one of their like residence halls. And I thought that was the coolest thing ever because it was like really pretty. Like the residence halls were really nice. Also, this is kind of random, but they had a bunch of swings hanging from their trees, like rope swings. It was just like really cool, I thought. And that was like, I should go here. This is fun.
So you can obviously see some of those impacts that aesthetics played during the research with these stories talked to by the eyes of one of my tour guides.
They have all kinds of people, not just what they're trying to sell. So I like that. And then, I don't know, more of just the small interactions, like seeing people, like kind of like talking to people briefly. Just students that were there. That was one of the better parts for me, just seeing people walking around and looking. excitement was there. It seemed obvious that admissions wanted to pull you in, but so did all the students here that may not have been given the fact sheet on everything that you can say about Camden University. That's great. That'll pull people in. The current students were the best salespersons. It seemed as though they wanted you to be here, which was more memorable because it was unexpected. The participants in the panels presented the message that you can do this versus we have these things that you.
And then
There's
last
like
is
some
the
kind
sense
culture
of
there,
community
rather
and
than it just
vibe.
being like a sole place where you go there, you learn a couple things here and there, and then you graduate. Like there has to be some kind of something else there, that extra oomph that gives it. We kind of like went and sat in a coffee shop on campus for most of the schools we visited, kind of observed the students. It's sort of creepy now in retrospect, but like we just would watch them and listen in on their conversations and see like how they were interacting and like what types of people some of them were, which I thought was really helpful. You get so much from a college visit that you aren't able to get from information available online and on social media. The college tour really was a valuable experience in terms of helping me learn more about a school and seeing how I would fit in that school and whether or not that school felt like it was the definite school that I would ultimately choose to attend.
So those are the three things that really stood out during my research and really helped me to think more about kind of how the college visit works and how to best help students along the way. So I want to talk now a little bit more about admissions and emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence, like I said, is more important now than ever in selective college admission because students are moving forward into either careers or graduate school after college. And as COVID-19 has eliminated the use of test scores in the past and current application cycles, colleges and universities are refocusing their attention on different ways that they can really analyze those soft skills in the application process, like emotional intelligence, executive functioning, and attributes that allow students to interact harmoniously with others. For years, colleges and universities have placed a great deal of emphasis on a student's ability to understand and contribute to diversity, to efforts in making their community better, in grit and resilience, and in overcoming adversity, in addition to evaluating a student's character and impact on others. But now, without testing, that focus is even more heightened. So let's take a deeper look into emotional intelligence. EI, or emotional intelligence, obviously refers to the ability to perceive, control, and evaluate your emotions. The ability to express and control emotions is essential, but so is the ability to understand, interpret, and respond to the emotions of others. Imagine a world in which you can't understand what a friend is feeling, especially if that friend is feeling sad or when a coworker is extremely angry. So thinking about self-awareness, thinking about the emotional, accurate self-assessment and self-confidence piece, but then also thinking about self-management. So that's what you do in the world. So that's self-control, transparency, shows displays of initiative, optimism, achievement, and initiative. When we're thinking about social competence, we're thinking about social awareness. So demonstrating empathy, organizational awareness, and service. In terms of relationship management, we're thinking about inspirational leadership, influence, developing others to their fullest potential, serving as a change catalyst, offering and working with conflict management in the workplace and with friendships, building bonds, teamwork, and collaboration. So all of these things really work together to build emotional intelligence for students. So making caring common is a big initiative that has really changed the game for college admissions. It's Harvard's project, Making Caring Common, as well as a recent book, The Tyranny of the Meritocracy, Democratizing Higher Education in America by Lonnie Gunier, have really brought to the forefront many of the issues that have long existed in admission within higher education. And three main tenets really came out of this with goals for admissions offices across the country. Developing greater concern for others and the common good among high school students, increasing equity and access for disadvantaged students, and reducing excessive achievement pressure. We know that that really exists today. And we're standing at a really exciting time regarding the future of admission and selection, one where caring about others and the common good and embracing and learning from one's missteps are extremely important. We are hoping to teach students that the importance of fairness is really an important one. Learning to do what is right is valued now more than ever, and giving students in the K through 12 setting the opportunity to learn and practice social and emotional learning before going to college, developing those skills that will ultimately yield students who will become global citizens that strive to make our world better than the way that they found it. Intense academic pressure, particularly in affluent communities, can really generate high levels of stress, anxiety, and/or depression in young people. As mentors and leaders, it's really our job to be mindful of how we contribute to that stress and anxiety and how we can help to eliminate this pressure in the future. Making Caring Common and the Harvard Project created the Turning the Tide report, with getting a number of colleges and universities on board to say that they do care about students who can demonstrate caring and emotional intelligence throughout the application. So what do colleges seek? What are colleges looking for? We're constantly looking for students who have the ability to influence, to energize, and inspire others to work together to make an impact in their community, whether that's in school, outside the school community, but somebody who's going to come to campus and really be a difference maker. We're seeking students that demonstrate that they're a person of integrity, empathy, and humility, that they have the capacity to stand up for what is right, not just what's popular at the time, and that they think of others before themselves. The students that we seek embrace the fact that they're always learning and growing on the journey of life. There's two ways that we've done this at Morehead Cain. One is by asking students how they've failed in their life, to tell a story about a time that they've really messed up and what they learned from that experience. And second is to have the student paint a picture of who they are in less than 140 words. Those are two very interesting ways to get to know a high school student a lot better. You would not be surprised to know that many students who write about their failure experiences often are willing to throw somebody else under the bus. You know, it was a bad teacher that made this happen. Like, I failed because of this other person. It's easy for them to kind of divert the blame onto somebody else rather than really fully taking ownership. In addition, students who have high levels of emotional intelligence are able to turn that story around full circle. So they're able to say, this happened, I learned this, and this is what I've taken into the future with me. This is how I've changed. This is how I've really learned from that experience, and showing how that learning has really impacted their life moving forward. Students who share multiple I statements really stand out against the students who are able to share who they are in relationship to others. So at Morehead Cain, we often ask students to paint a picture of who they are, and the students will say, I did this, I did that, I did this, I did that. And that's not what we're looking for. We're looking for students who can work well with others, students who can be team players, collaborators, but also inspire others to take action. So we're looking for a leader within a group, not just an individual leader. So it's really changing the way, again, schools are looking for students to really thrive and make a difference in their communities versus the way that they used to in the past with just test scores. So I talked a little bit about the importance of storytelling, but I think that that's such an important part of the campus visit, as well as part of the admission process. It's the job of the college or university to really think about how they can share the story of their campus, of their university, of their communities, telling those stories about when they all rallied together around a cause, about their traditions, about the things that really do make them stand out. Conversely, it's the applicant's job to also think a lot about storytelling. How can you share the story of who you are, what makes you different, why you'd be such a good fit at this particular college or university? Again, we look for students who think before they react. They have really good self-awareness, and they're able to show empathy for others. We recommend students really spend some time listening, empathizing, and reflecting on who they are and who they want to be in the college admission process. So in order to put in the practice, how can you help students to get there? Teaching students about empathy, teaching them to stick with things that are challenging. Oftentimes it's those challenging experiences that really make us better, and that are really things that we remember long term. So sticking with that challenging math class, or sticking with that really difficult foreign language that was hard for the student to kind of really grasp, can really help that student to build some of that resilience and grit along the way. using role models to talk about diligence, and having regular conversations with students about gratitude, ways to give back, ways to say thank you, ways to bring that forward into their life. One of my biggest pet peeves in the job world is when students or when people who are interviewing for jobs don't write a thank you note. Gratitude goes a long way. Showing some of that experiences is really important. So regularly engaging in a way to contribute to their community, talking about mistakes, having meaningful conversations with students. What was the best part of your day? What was the toughest? What did you learn today? What are you hoping to do better tomorrow? And thinking about messaging. The most important thing to say to a student is, the most important thing is that you're happy. Instead of saying that, the most important thing is that you are kind to others and that you are happy. So making caring and justice a focus for students is extremely important to help them to learn about who to be in the world and how to teach self-control. So caring as a mentor, keeping the focus on your students, taking the time to listen, check blind spots, and be alert to red flags. You don't want to confuse your interest with a student's. That can often happen when talking about college admission, right? Oftentimes we say, these are the dinner party schools that we'd be proud to talk about, but reflect on your assumptions and your biases against good colleges. One of the best things about being in the United States and going to school abroad too is just how many incredible institutions there are, and the opportunities are ripe for the picking at every college and at every university. There's not just a few that can have a really great launching pad for students to find what they want to do and to really thrive and live their best life moving forward. I would encourage you to encourage students that you work with or students of your own to contribute to others. High school students in middle and upper class communities are often caught up in a kind of community service Olympics. They believe that they'll have an edge in the application if they start an entirely new project, create a nonprofit, conduct service in a faraway country, or tackle some formidable problem in their community. But these factors in and of themselves don't determine the value of service. We're looking for students that, again, want to help and want to be a part of solutions, whether they're big or small. They want to be a part of a bigger community. And use college admission as an opportunity for ethical education. Being honest with students about inequality in the process. Things aren't always fair, and just because you've worked hard and done well in school doesn't necessarily mean you'll be accepted into your first choice college. And that, again, is not the end of the world, because there are so many great colleges and universities. So now I'm going to move on a little bit to the college application and how to prepare for that process. So again, we talked a lot about how emotional intelligence can kind of come through during the college application process. So the first thing is compassion. So compassion is obviously a concern for the welfare for others that is evoked by perceiving another individual as struggling or in need. So this can really come through on a student's application in a number of different ways. It could come through in the extracurricular components or writing about activities. A student might volunteer in an elderly home. They might have limited extracurricular activities because of extended family responsibilities at home. Or a recommendation letter might mention that a student frequently shows genuine care for other students, either by tutoring, mediating, understanding different viewpoints, or helping students as they're working through personal struggles at school or at home. Curiosity. So curiosity is the desire to learn and understand new things and how they work. Students who join groups to learn more about people of different backgrounds. These are people that are really interested in getting to know a different community, who pursue the opportunity to shadow someone in their prospective field after graduation. Or a recommender might talk about how this particular student is constantly asking probing or intellectual questions, always trying to learn and know more, that they're definitely someone who will be a lifelong learner. The growth mindset. So a growth mindset is the belief that intelligence and talents can advance through perseverance and dedication. So a long time commitment to an activity, even if you're not great at it, sticking with soccer because you just really love the game, even if you're not the top athlete. A student who thrived after constructive criticism in a class or an activity, or a student who doesn't back down from a challenge. Again, these are really great things to get to know from the student, but also to be backed up by their recommendation letters when they're applying to college. And then last is that sense of purpose. So a stable and generalized intention to accomplish something that is at the same time meaningful to the self and consequential for the world beyond the self. So activities that are tied to future goals or desire to learn to kind of move forward towards those goals for their future. Sincere and continual interests in solving problems or achieving their long-term goals. And again, this is something that can be really great if backed up in some of those recommendation letters, but can come through in the essays and extracurriculars as well. So I've thrown a lot out at you, but I hope at the end, what you remember is that the way that you make people feel is always going to be more influential than what you say or what you did. And I think that that's something that really comes through as somebody who's read multiple college applications for over a decade. It's so important to know who the student is and how they make you feel when you're reading their application, when you're getting to know their story, when you're really getting down to who that person really is. So thank you so much for your time and for your attention today. I am very excited to get to take some questions and to help answer anything that I might be able to help with. So thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you, Justine. That was so so informative. And I feel like you really kind of demystified some of the, like, what does it all mean for me? I had a quick question just about, because I kind of grew up in the idea too of like, you have to have all these extracurriculars and you have to do all these things and you have to have all this service, right? And so I feel like the advice I got many, many years ago was, do a lot of things and do them all really well, but don't stick with things you don't do well. And for me, sticking with things I don't do well is like a learning and growth opportunity. So would you say that it shows more emotional intelligence or more kind of stick to itness, maybe? Like you said, if a student maybe plays soccer for 8 years or is in the same kind of service club for a certain amount of years, instead of doing a ton of different things that are just kind of like resume fillers. Could you speak more about that?
Sure, absolutely. So I would say it's a balance. So at every college and university that I've worked at, so I worked at William & Mary, I worked at Duke, I worked at Chapel Hill, and now I'm working at East Carolina. But every single school that I've worked for, the important thing is that we're looking for a balance. You want a student who is obsessed with the violin, and that's all of their activities. They take lessons, they teach students, they volunteer, they're in a quartet, they're studying music theory on the side, right? You want the student that is hyper-focused into certain elements, but you also want students who are joiners, who want to be in a number of different activities. Maybe they have leadership in some, but they really thrive being involved in a large number of activities. You want the students who try something and decide, maybe this isn't the best fit for me and try something else. But you also want the students that do have that stick-to-itiveness and who can stick with something that maybe isn't something that's naturally easy for them, but that they really enjoy. So that's not to say that there's one right answer, right? Though every answer in admissions is either it depends or context. So that's not always helpful, but it is true. So all that to say that every time you're building a class, it's kind of like building a puzzle. You're trying to get a lot of different types of students who are going to bring a lot of different types of energy to a college campus. Otherwise, who's going to be in the lumberjack club, the Harry Potter club, the pancake lovers club? You have to have all those different types of students on campus to really make it as diverse and as exciting to everybody else. You don't want everybody to fit some kind of cookie cutter mold, but I think you're right. When I was growing up, it was you must be well-rounded. So I danced, I played tennis, I was in a number of other clubs, and I didn't really have the time to specialize. And I would say that colleges and universities are really changing the game on that. And I would say in the past couple of years, obviously because of COVID, the importance of having a part-time job has really made a difference as well, because students learn so much responsibility and initiative and teamwork from having a job. And especially during COVID, when a lot of people weren't able to work, and some high school students were able to have the opportunity to work, it did show us a lot about who they are, who they could be, and that they could kind of take on some extra levels of responsibility and initiative during a time when maybe some of their other extracurriculars weren't happening in the same way. So I would say it really just depends on the student. That's not to say every student should stick to something that they don't like or that they're not good at, because if you don't like something, you're not going to get as much out of it, right? But students have to find that balance.
Awesome. Thank you.
No problem.
And I'll also just pop on to say, if there's anybody that wants to ask a question but doesn't want to be recorded or doesn't want to be on screen, feel free to put it in the chat and Justine will see it, or I'm happy to ask it, however we want to do that.
I'll unmute. I would just like to know, how has the pandemic and COVID affected or changed the college admission process? I know we had an opportunity to do some campus visits over the summer, but they weren't official visits. Nobody was there. There wasn't a tour. But I completely agree with what you said in the beginning. You got a feel for the campus. You got a feel for the surroundings. And a lot of the rank order of, I like this, 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 and this changed when we went on these visits and these tours, just based on some of those aesthetic things that you talked about in the beginning. So how has some of that changed the admission process?
Absolutely, great question. So I would say before COVID, right, demonstrated interest was a thing at many colleges where they were saying, okay, you've opened our emails or you've come to visit campus, so you're obviously interested in our college or campus. And obviously that changed quite significantly with COVID, but I would say the second part of that is just not having test scores has meant that schools are really diving deeper into those factors that we talked about today about emotional intelligence, right? Because at the end of the day, at one college I worked at, we used to say, like, our motto is just no jerks, right? We want students that are really caring, compassionate people. And so we're looking for those insights in their application, in their recommendation letters, in their essays, etc. So when you strip away test scores and say that that's no longer going to be a factor, we're spending a lot more time thinking about the students' academics in high school. Not that we weren't looking at that before, but we are spending more time doing that. And then we're also dissecting some of those things throughout the application as well, to try and really get into this sense of who the student is. I'm picturing, when I'm reading an application, who is the student if they were my roommate, if they were my lab partner, if they were the president of a club or organization on campus? What can they bring to this campus that nobody else can? And so a lot of those are through intangible factors, like the way that they write about their activities, the way that they talk about the way that they share their story in the essay. It's very difficult, and I've led many a session on college essay writing, but it is really difficult to tap into an essay that's going to be unique and different and stand out, right? There's numbers of great ones out there, but there's so many students who write about things that are just too relevant or too relatable to other students. When you think about students who are writing about like a soccer or sports injury, that happens all the time. It's really hard to make that unique or different or stand out from another sports injury essay. Students who talk about going abroad and having it open their eyes to, a whole nother world or a whole nother culture. It's hard to write that in a different way than thousands of other college applicants. So it's hard to tap into those things that really make you unique and different. And that's why I always tell students it's important to really think about who you are, to ask questions of the people around you. Ask your parents, ask your teachers, ask your friends, what things do you think are different about me than other people? Reflecting on those things and really trying to have them shine through your college applications. I would say it's also important to think about who knows you best when when asking people to write recommendation letters on your behalf. It's often popular to be like, oh, this is the best English teacher in the school. She writes great letters, or he writes great letters, so we're all going to ask that person. Well, if that person doesn't know you the best or isn't the best person to share stories and experiences that they've had with you in the classroom, then that's going to be a disservice to your application. So really thinking, how can I make this personal and authentic to me to show off my best self? Because at the end of the day, you don't want to be putting airs on to apply to college, right? You want to feel good about it. You want to feel like they're accepting you for who you are. So I think that's really important. But without test scores, obviously that's changed and really made us dive into other factors in the application process. So we did get a question in the chat. Is it more Is it more important to college admissions that you make a significant difference in a few extracurriculars rather than just joining a lot of extracurriculars to check boxes? So that's a great question. I would say the most important thing is that you do things that you care about, right? If you're passionate about things, then that's when it shines through. And when students write about their extracurriculars, if they say, you know, community service, Lausanne required me to do 150 hours, then clearly they didn't want to do it. So if they talk, it depends on how they talk about things, right? So when a student says like, I was a dancer growing up. I was not that great, but I absolutely loved it. The highlight of my year was being in the Nutcracker or whatever. Those are ways that you kind of get to know a little bit more about that student, right? Maybe they weren't the best, totally fine. Do they have kind of a cheeky sense of humor? Are they telling you this is a requirement for me to do this? Sometimes students say like, my parents forced me to do this. I mean, you'd be surprised. These are on like scholarship applications to Duke and Morehead Cain. Students are very honest occasionally when they don't want to do something. So it's helpful to kind of get to know that student. I would say joining a lot of extracurriculars and having no depth is not a good thing to do. You can have depth and still be involved in a lot of things, but if you aren't really passionate about anything, having a long list is not going to be so helpful, right? Because then your recommendation letters are going to kind of reflect that same thing. They're going to say, well, Justine's in 10 clubs, but she's too busy to go to the meetings because she's in 10. You know, I don't know. So it helps to kind of get that context and say like, you know, this person is super passionate. Stephen loves this club, but, you know, also enjoys being involved in these other things on the side. So like having something that you're really excited about doesn't mean that you can't be in multiple things or organizations, but just making sure that you have some passion and depth there. Next question. How do you suggest explaining to parents that colleges are looking for emotionally intelligent students when the parents are focused on rankings and the percent of graduates getting job placement? Well, like I said, I feel very strongly that we have really amazing colleges in the state of Tennessee, across the United States, as well as internationally. I think that you make the most of your college experience. One of my favorite books, The Tipping Point, actually talks a little bit about the college application process and about how the best students at each school actually have the best success rates. So while it seems like it's smart to go to a school that's highly ranked, if you're going to be middle or bottom of the pack, those same opportunities are not going to be there for you as they are for other students. So being actually towards the top end of any school, literally any school that you attend, actually has better performance outcomes because you're going to have better access to professors. They're going to be more excited to work with your student because they're the top of the pack. They're going to have better research opportunities. They might have better opportunities for merit scholarships. And coming out of college without debt is incredible. That really helps to open the doors for graduate school and professional school down the line, as well as for life-changing opportunities like studying abroad and things that can be a barrier for some students in college. So getting those opportunities is very important. Also being top of the pack means that you're going to have better access to some of those student affairs resources on a college campus, better help with career placement, better help with getting internships. If you're the top student at your school, your chances of getting a Rhodes Scholarship are higher, as well as a number of other postgraduate fellowships. So I would say that the tough thing is that while we put a lot of pressure on students to think these schools have high job placement rates or these schools have high graduation rates. Thank you for putting that in there, Amber. I think that it's really, really essential to think about where is a place that I can see myself being happy and thriving. Doesn't have to be super far away from home, could be super far away from home. Where's a place that I can see myself like being happy after like a hard chemistry lecture? Where are the trees and the bricks and the places going to make me feel supported? Where am I going to be able to make friends? Where am I going to be able to make a difference? What things are important? If you love the beach, you probably want to be closer to the beach. If you love skiing, you probably want to be closer to mountains, right? So finding those things that are really going to connect you and make you feel happy and supported during your college experience are going to be so important. And I would say parents need to focus a little bit less on the rankings because they are so subjective, and really focus on the place that their student can be happy. Because again, you can go to school literally anywhere and still go to an Ivy for grad school. And we are always telling students that if you do well in undergrad, you're going to get into a better graduate school. So there's always time to eat your cake and have it too.
That's awesome. I think that's something that I needed to hear as a student was that you go to college where it makes you happy. Thinking about test scores, and I know that this is probably just a question that no one can answer right now, but do you see a trend in moving away from placing? I know right now during COVID, we aren't really looking at test scores in the same way, but do you see a trend in looking less at test scores and more at the emotional intelligence and the depth of activities and things that students do? I know I'm not a great tester. That was always hard for me. It was like, I have a 4.0 and I'm in all these things, but like I panic at tests. And so is that something you think is going to have less weight in the future, maybe these standardized tests?
I think that's a great question. I would love to say yes, but I'm not positive about that. I feel like a lot of colleges are going to quickly return to standardized tests as a way just to compare students from around the world. And I think that is a good and a bad thing. I think a lot of colleges have learned we can do college admission and evaluation without test scores. And I think regardless of what happens, that was an extremely valuable lesson for everyone, because I've often long believed that we could fill the class at most colleges or universities 3 to 4 times over with students that are rejected or waitlisted. They can do the work academically, right? It has nothing to do with that. It's just that there is a lot of pressure on colleges and universities to continue to maintain their rankings with test scores. So I think that you're going to see a battle. I think you're going to see a lot of schools that hold on to test optional, but I also think you're going to see a lot of schools that go right back to test scores after the pandemic, after things kind of quiet down a little bit more. So I think it'll be interesting. I mean, we've always had schools that were test optional, really phenomenal schools as well. And Wake Forest in North Carolina has long been test optional, and they are an incredible institution. But I think some schools don't want to get into that realm. And I think for a variety of reasons. I also think that there's a lot of movement, and there has been for years, about different ways to show academic prowess without test scores, submitting graded assignments with feedback from teachers. I think when the Coalition app started, they had a brilliant idea for what that might look like, with more of a locker of lots of academic history, but ultimately, college admission officers just don't have the time to review thousands of previous documents. So I think that it's going to be a balance, and hopefully things will continue to move forward in a positive direction. I think we're moving in a good direction, showing that at colleges and universities can do things without test scores. But I also think that there's going to be some holdover to this is how we've always done things.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, I see this is how we've always done things. Like, I think it can be valuable to look, of course, at your past, but I think that I agree with you. People are saying like, oh, we can do this. Now, should we or not? That may be like an individual institution's decision, but I think that's great. So thank you.
Of course. Vicki, you have your hand up. Oh, you're on mute, Vicki. Can I unmute you?
My apologies. I was wondering about how what colleges are doing about the male young boys not opting for college, young men not going to college. It seems like so many women are going more and more, and are not. Young men are not. And so, how, as a society and as colleges, how are they addressing that?
That's a great question. I would say a number of different ways. While I worked at Morehead Cain and while I worked at Duke and Merit Scholarships, one of the things that was really important to us was always trying to think about how we can get more students, especially male students, to apply and to consider things. I can't tell you how many times I've heard from students like, I'm a guy, I'm never going to get a scholarship. So I think it's a lot about communication. I spent a lot of time trying to connect with counselors across the state of North Carolina to explain to them like how many of our applicants for scholarships were female versus male, and trying to help to establish more relationships. We also worked a lot of trying to get into different organizations that work specifically with high school males in terms of thinking about college and thinking about career trajectory and thinking about what they wanted to do next, not just at private schools, but also at public schools and charters as well. But I think that there are so many opportunities. I think a lot of parents, to be honest, are skeptical about higher education in general, with the prices continuing to rise and showing so many different job opportunities and career paths you can take to make significant amount of money after high school. It is a challenge. People are skeptical and they want to make the decisions that are really right for them. So I think a lot of that is about trying to be in those communities, trying to talk about the value, trying to talk about different ways that students can pursue things that they're really passionate about in college and beyond, and how they can be really connected to mentors and other people. I think persistence is also sometimes harder for men in college than for women in order to finish and graduate and all that good stuff. So I think we have to do a lot of work on our college campus as well to kind of keep those students engaged and keep them interested and focused on their future. Ultimately, you're never going to win, you're never going to get everybody on board with that, but I think that there is a lot of work that needs to be done.
I think if I could just interject, I think a wonderful way between social media and the media, I think everybody's feeling marginalized. Everybody's being put into buckets. In this up is, to me, it dovetails very much into social emotional learning and how we perceive ourselves in the greater society. So if everybody's put into buckets based on your social economic race or your gender, then and not being addressed by who you are on that, because I think the country definitely feel marginalized. I think women have done a great job in focusing on raising their daughters to be strong, that have opportunity with our young boys, because they've always had it. And I think they're very, very lost. And I don't think anybody's talking about it. So I just want to put that out there because I think we're seeing a consequence.
Absolutely. I completely agree.
All right. Well, are there any other questions for Justine tonight? All right.
Well, thank you all so much. Again, feel free to reach out to me at any time. I'm happy to help. Obviously a Lausanne alum, so always willing to help as much as possible.
Justine, thank you so much for doing this. This was wonderful.
Yes. Yeah. And again, I feel like you kind of demystified some of the ideas behind what does it mean to be to have emotional intelligence? What does it mean to show depth? Those are really subjective questions, but I think it feels more approachable now. Like the idea of it feels more approachable. So thank you so much. So Lori asked a question that I'll answer for us, and then I'll let you answer as well, Justine. She said, are you doing any other sessions on the essay process? I know that we at Lausanne have sessions for our students on a whole variety of things through our college advising program. Lausanne Learning and the SEL program, we don't have anything specifically on that in our speaker series. So, but I'd be happy to point you in the right direction for some resources. Justine, do you have anything coming up that you would recommend, or books or anything that you would recommend to people about that process?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say because so many colleges and universities are doing virtual sessions, a number of them are doing sessions specifically on ask questions of the dean, or learn more about the college admission process, or ask questions about essay writing. So you can find some of that is much more school specific, because again, every school has their own things and things that they're looking for, of course. So that's a really great way to get started. But I would say even when students meet college admission reps that come to Lausanne or do virtual presentations, things like that, you can always recommend what kind of essay topics do you recommend against? What things do you really like? What have been some application essays that really stood out to you in the past year? And I think you learn so much by asking just that question of different college reps that can really be helpful in the process.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And anyone too who has questions about resources, about, any kind of upcoming meetings, feel free to reach out to me. The recording will be up on the website. I can also connect you with Justine too. So we're all, I know, happy to chat and happy to help with anything. So it's a process. And I think, you know, social emotional learning, SEL, just being in education in general is a process. And we're a community that gets stronger the more we talk to each other. So I appreciate this so much. And I agree, very informative. I learned a ton. So thank you. And it was so nice to finally meet you too. So awesome. Well, thank you, everyone. Before we leave, I just want to give, again, a thanks to Dr. Okerson for being here and sharing her knowledge with us. Our next speaker series event is in October. It's October 19th with Dr. Brian Perlman. I'm really excited about that one. He's going to be doing a lot of talking about resilience and emotional intelligence as well. So make sure you sign up for that. It's the same page that you signed up for tonight. I will be sending out information about that really soon. I'll also have tonight's recording up and any resources. And again, feel free to reach out to me, to Justine, to Greg Graber, who's at Lausanne with me. We are always happy to share resources and connect. So if no one has any other questions, I'm just going to go ahead and end the meeting and thank everyone so much again for being here for our very first event of the year.
Thank you so much.